Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to make a start on the October 2025 Cozy Christmas Paper Pumpkin alternatives. But first of all, let's start from the very beginning. This is the box that it came in, so you know full well that the contents are just going to be mind-blowing. These are the colour instructions. As always, I come in every kit that would show you how to make these 9 cards if you did them as is. But of course, that's not why we're here. We're going to crack on with some alternatives. But the fun of this kit is that the pieces are flocked. It's quite hard to see that actually. They don't even glisten or anything. But believe me, they're fuzzy. And, you know, I used to always joke back when dinosaurs roamed the earth about things that my children used to say. And I said to my husband, well, back at the turn of the century, but you know what it really was in about, the year 2000, 2001, Stampin' Up! Used to sell flocking. So I don't recall having thrown it out. So I'm going to get that out soon and I'll probably come back and do another video, but not today. We are going to concentrate on making cards using the ingredients. So let me just pop those instructions off to one side and we'll get started with the first card. Now the first card totally decimated an envelope. I use envelope pieces quite often, but I don't think I've used them quite as intensely as what I got out of just one envelope. So these are they've got a lovely sort of basic beige textured look and then this lovely star on the pecan pie. And the pecan pie was the spot that came in the kit. But as you know, I have all the big pads and I didn't even use pecan pie. So I'm going to bring in the colours as we go along. I've got cherry cobbler, real red and garden green. Although I do have the big real red, I'm going to use the little real red just to show the concept of how equally effective the little stamping spots are. So what I did was I cut the envelope at the sides, cut it open. So you can see this is what we got. So I also used, too far away. Ugh. I used these lovely textured note dies and I cut the biggest border. The kit comes actually with layers and borders. So you get the 3 different coloured card bases and 3 different coloured layered elements. But I thought, if I can get away with using envelopes and save these for cards, that's what I'm going to do. And there are all sorts of punch outs and die pieces and, whoa, like I say, a bit too scary. So this is what we did with the envelope, bless its heart. There was the envelope like that with the piece. So this came out of there. I cut 2 of these, one of which is going to be used in a later card. And then I cut this layer out of what was effectively the back of the envelope. And you will see all these various pieces turn up. But I just wanted to show you that it's very possible to get fabulous cards out of the envelopes. So here was my little try it out style. So I took a piece of garden green cardstock, 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. All the card bases that I am using have started 8.5 by 5.5. This one scored at 4 1/4. And then, like I say, I cut out the biggest piece from the envelope using the textured note dies. And then we've got these lovely punch outs and the topper. Now, there's a piece is supposed to fit on the original. There is a piece supposed to go underneath that, but that's coming up in a bit of a later card. So let me just put that back where I can still see it. It's falling over. But I'm just going to use this one for now. So what I did was I measured from the top of the card down to where this would sort of sit on the top of it, and I turned it over, and you'll see why in just a second. I mean, I could actually go ahead and stick this to the card and then it wouldn't really try and wander anywhere. So this is, luckily it's symmetrical, so when I flip it back over, you will see what I was trying to do. So I am going to bring in the cherry cobbler because that is the main colour of this. And the only reason I've turned it over is that I don't want to get ink inadvertently anywhere. So I'm going to take, there are 3 little stars, and I'm just going to ink up the one on the edge. And I'm going to stamp that in there. Actually, I don't need this to be there. I know where I've put it is positioned correctly. So we'll stamp up just that one little star and put it in there. One in there. And one in there. Oh, we've got a little bit of ink, but never mind. The card is going to be so fabulous, no one's going to spot that. So we will close the cherry cobbler ink for now. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to flip this back over and attach that. And I'm actually going to attach it so it hangs over the edge. It just gives it a little bit more dimension. But in the meantime, I am going to follow my own advice and just attach this layer to the front of the garden green. Oops, the right way around would be awfully helpful, Alyson. So we'll attach that to there. And then I am going to just attach this to the edges, and I'm going to bring in a silicone mat so I don't get sticky where I don't necessarily want it to be. So just a couple of little pieces in there. Oops, see, that bit of sticky would have been on my work surface now and attaching itself to all the subsequent cards I was trying to make. So I'm going to line those back up and let that hang over the edge. Full disclosure, I got that idea actually from the card that comes in the kit. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to attach this to the top. Now I can put big adhesive on there, but when it comes to this little runner, I am going to bring in my liquid glue. Just put a tiny slither up there. And then we will run this from the top of the card down as far as it goes, because we know it's going to attach over there so it looks like it is the ornament. And then the card, sounds like I'm picking the whole card to pieces. I don't mean to do that at all, but just, it suggested deck the halls, but it covers up all that gorgeousness and I really didn't want to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in garden green and I am going to bring in deck the halls, and I'm just going to stamp it up in this top corner. And I just think that's just as lovely. And then you've still got all this fabulousness, you know, out in the open. And then they did provide these lovely sequins, which are really, really gorgeous. So let me bring in the card and see where they suggested putting them. So we'll put one there. Whoops. Well, they did have one under the greeting, which of course we don't have. So I will put one down here and one, and that makes it equal then, doesn't it? So there we go. So there we have card one. So it's still got the lovely flocked middle. It's used the stamps that came in the set, and nothing has been obscured. So that's the first card. Onward to the second one. So I am going to make the flocked Christmas tree. But for those of you who have a level of expectation and know me well, this is going to be our ZZ fold card. So what I'm going to do is I took a card front, or half of one of the card bases. So that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I'm just going to trim it down a smidge so it becomes 5 3/8. Whoops. But I'm not going to make it smaller 4 1/4 width wise. I'm just going to cut off a piece that's 2 inches and leave the 2 1/4 inch piece. And then what I have is a piece that's 5 3/8, and this is 1 7/8, and that they are going to fit together on the inside. So I took a piece of real red cardstock, 8 1/2 by 5 1/2 as promised, scored at 4 1/4. So like I say, all of the measurements are going to start with that. But then of course, being a ZZ fold card, it folds back on itself. So I scored it again at 2 1/8, or you can just fold it back on itself. And then this is the layer that's just a smidge smaller. So it's now 2 by 5 3/8. So we'll quickly pop that on. And then we'll put the 2 1/4 inch piece by 5 3/8, of course, and we will put it over on the other side. And then the 1 7/8 just fits in here and then makes the nice layer and the inside piece that you can sign on. So we'll put that up against the other piece, and there we have it. So there is the ZZ fold. Now the tree, there is not really much you can do with this tree to make it, you know, to cut it down or make it any less. I suppose you could cut little pieces and stick them around, but I wasn't sure. And besides which, I really wanted the whole tree on my card. So I'm just going to put some adhesive along the edge of the bottom and then add this layer. And it could be done with dimensionals, but because of the ZZing, I didn't want to do that. And then we can add the top. So now we have a whole tree, and the star is also flocked, and that came out of one of the punch outs. That goes, actually it came out of the punch out that went with the ornament that we made in the first card. So this is where I got that from. So now we are going to attach the tree to the front, and we just need to make sure that it comes down to the bottom so there's actually enough space to add the star to the top. So our trusty as ever ZZ fold style. So we're going to line up the middle of there's 5 of them, so it's half of that one, and not put any adhesive as usual further than you can see. And then we will stick that to the bottom. So you can see there's no adhesive. I mean, granted, you can see where the tree is fastened together, but you know, small mercies. And then I was going to use a dimensional until I realized, well, I can't really do that because the dimensional would stick off the other side. So I'm just going to put glue on one side of the star, again using the same principle, because if I put it all over when we close the card, it is going to stick down. So that can go up the middle, and then when you open it, the tree moves with itself. And again, there was nowhere I really wanted to put the greeting that it would obscure the tree. However, I'm going to just use Deck the Halls because it's the one that's small enough to fit, and I am going to do it with Real Red. So like I say, I'm going to use the spot and just dab it all over the greeting. And then place that up in the top corner. And there you have it. So it does say Deck the Halls. And then of course I'll be singing with Boughs of Holly for the rest of the day. And then we'll bring back in these lovely sequins and find my stylus, which I have thrown off to one side. And let me have a look at the card. They have 2 at one side and 1 on the tree. So we can put, I think I'm just going to put 1 up in the top corner so that goes across to the middle. And then I will just put 2 down here. So there we have, as expected, it's an Alyson Video Paper Pumpkin ZZ Fold card. So that is card number 2. And cracking on, I am going to make this one. So here is the piece. Here's the piece of the envelope that we cut out. Here is a little piece of gold cord that I had. Each quarter there are dies that match with the 3 months of Paper Pumpkin, and this one, clearly because it's a die on the other side, had joy. So what I did was I took a piece of basic beige cardstock, 8.5 by 5.5, scored it 4 1/4, and then I took one of the card front or card back of the lovely red, and I die cut the joy out of that because it's going to be hidden and it can't be seen. And now we have the lovely joy. And then the piece that was supposed to go under this card, I'm now going to utilize and make that into an ornament. So what I did was I took a little piece of gold cord that I had sort of in my stash, to be honest, and I'm going to put some adhesive on there and just attach it to the back, and then put some more adhesive on, and I'm just going to place this as high up as it obscures the greeting. So again, it could go on dimensionals, but I wasn't sure that I wanted to do that. I wasn't sure how much I could see what was peeking through. And then that will just flip over and stay behind there. And then this gets attached to the card front like a normal layer. Because it was just cut down a little. It's 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. And then I am going to attach this with dimensionals. There's only a couple of places where they will fit, so I'm going to use the little skinny mini ones. Whoops, that's not even a dimensional. But then when you have used up all of your supplies, you get left with these lovely strips. So I am going to cut off a skinny strip, cut just a small length of that, and I'm going to use it to go down the body of the Y just to give it a little extra support. Whoops, oh, don't stick to my table. So there we have joy. happy, happy, joy, joy. And then this is the piece that we cut out of the envelope. And what better to say than to the world. And to pick out the green, I am going to bring in the garden green and stamp the greeting with that. So, red joy to the green world. There we go. And bring in some dimensionals that do actually have some in. Flick those off to one side. And there we have it. So joy to the world. It's got this lovely flocking. It's got a little bit of dimension, and it's got the gold of the cord going off to the top. I'm not going to add the sequins to this yet. There's a limited amount that we get, so I think I might just see if anything else needs it a little bit more. But that's card number 3. So cracking ever onward. Here is the next one. So one of the pieces that came, here's the one we used, here's the tree, with these lovely elements that's supposed to stick out the side of joy. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to use them for a card. So basic beige, 8.5 by 5.5. And then the card front that I cut down, I took the back of it and I cut it in half. So this is 5.5 by 2 1/8. And I am just going to attach that to the bottom front of this card. And then I have a piece of garden green, which is 3.25 by 1 5/8. And then the other piece that we cut out of the back of the envelope, you'll remember, this is 3 1/8 by 1 1/2. And then I took a little bit of the lovely real red shimmer ribbon, which is currently available in the holiday mini catalogue. And then this little flocked doodad I cut in half. Now the kit does provide die cut pieces that you can stamp Merry Christmas onto, but I didn't want to, because I thought I can use that somewhere else, and this can take a whole rectangle, if that makes sense. So what I'm going to do is I am going to bring in the Merry Christmas, and I'm going to bring in my real red spot that I seem to have misplaced. So again, of course, you could do this with a regular big ink pad. I just wanted to show that the spots are just as handy dandy. So we will stamp that on there, bright and cheerful. Oh, and look, you can actually see the little edges. Can you see that the edge, that was the back of the envelope? It's quite funny. And we'll just pop that on the layer there. And then I am going to put a little dot of adhesive on these handy little flaps that were created when I cut the pieces out, and stick these on the back of here. So it just gives a little bit of extra. I feel like my whole mess is starting to encroach on me. So that can go there. And I'm just gonna half it between the two. And then in every kit, they give us glue dots, which are lovely. But as you know, I use my rolling adhesive just for speed. But when it comes to attaching ribbon, they're really handy to have. So I'm just going to take one and put it down at the bottom of here, peel the backing off, and then just scrunch it in a little bit so it doesn't show beyond the knot on the ribbon, and then pop that into place, and there you have it. So we've got flocking and we've got the shiny ribbon, and I'll probably come back and revisit the sequins and put a couple on there, but let's crack on and let's do the last card. Now this card, this is one of the layered fronts. So I took a piece of garden green, 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. Oh, and as always, of course, don't forget there are the pieces that are the 1/6 of a piece of basic white. So they are 4 1/4 by 3.5, and you can get 6 of those out of one sheet. So every card, unless it's pale, if it's basic beige, it doesn't really need it, but anything that's slightly darker, I always add an inside layer. And then we've got this lovely wonderment, and then we've got the joy. Well, it's got the lovely flocked pieces, and it did have the joy which just came out of one of the die punch outs. But sorry, Stampin' Up, I really thought these were quite dull. Dare I say dull? Anyway, that's 2 critiques in one video. Oh gosh, I don't mean that really. Well, perhaps I do. So what I did was I took my Wink of Stella and I Wink of Stella'd them, and you probably can't, oh you can, there you go, just so that they've got a little shimmer. It became a little bit more of something. So Wink of Stella in the current catalogue, it's a fabulous little invention. And then all I'm going to do is attach these, doing it on the silicone mat, of course, so I don't get adhesive everywhere. You could do it with liquid glue, and I definitely would have done it up the Y, but the Y doesn't actually really need it. So I'm going to pop those into the logical places where they would go. And then on the card that came in the kit, it said joy to the world. So as we've got red and it's going onto a garden green card, I am going to do this in the garden green. So we'll have red joy to the green world. I think that's what we just did on the last one, wasn't it? So joy, red joy to the green world. That will just do nicely. And then I am going to attach this to the front of there flatly, and I still can't help myself. Whenever I say flatly, I have to say, oh, Michael Flatley. There's so many quirks that I come out with. Quite often when I say, oh, that'll do, I have to add pig. So it's becoming, I'm very conscious of the fact that I do it and that I shouldn't. And yet somehow my brain doesn't stop my lips working to say what they shouldn't. So there is joy to the world without the greenery, but I think we can get away with that. And then I am just going to add a couple of dimensionals. So I'm going to put one down here, and then the 2 up there like they have in their sample. But no, I'm going to add them to here. I think they've got them everywhere actually. And usually I do them in 3s, and okay, you could do 5 there, but I think it catches your eye enough that it's all right. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to add big dimensionals. Oops, let me finish this off. Thank you for just appearing. And then let me snip that in half. put it on the edge. So there we go. There is the last card. And again, this is such a lovely card. The tree, I can't really think of anything I could do with the tree quite yet. And I have used sort of regular cardstock instead of the card bases, because I think I can use the card bases as sort of background paper. Let me make sure which one. I don't remember where I started. That's where I started. And then I thought if I lifted this up on dimensionals, it would add a little bit of something to it, because we're trying to get as many as we can out of the gorgeousness of this. So here we go. Here is card number 1 with the added stamping. Card number 2 is the, as expected, ZZ fold card. Then we've got the 3 with the inside of that one, the lovely Merry Christmas, and the Joy to the World. So that's my first selection, my loves. That's my first go round. My brain's already whirring for more, as you would expect. So don't forget to check back often. If you've got a question, please feel free to pop it in the box below. I love to hear what you think of the cards that I'm making, so a comment always goes down well. And in the meantime, thanks so much for watching.